Constellation Scorpius, celestial home of the giant red star Antares, a huge thermonuclear furnace radiating its energy into space. Light from this colossus hurtles toward Earth at more than 1 billion kilometers per hour. It reaches the Earth 360 years later, a reddish twinkle in the night sky. Beneath the twinkling gaze of Antares, a man-made twin to the distant red giant is planned. A machine to generate energy through the thermonuclear reaction that burns within the stars. Like its brother in space, this star machine will be called Antares. Stars. Billions of suns hanging in space on invisible lines of interacting gravitational force. The same force that draws the star's own mass in upon itself to trigger thermonuclear fusion. Nuclei of atoms strongly repel one another, but forced into contact by extreme heat and pressure, they may fuse to form new, heavier atoms and to release thermonuclear energy. One reaction involves the fusion of 2 hydrogen isotopes, deuterium and tritium. They fuse to form helium and a free high-energy neutron. It is unlikely that a natural thermonuclear reaction has ever occurred on Earth. There is not enough mass in our planet for gravity to create sufficient heat and pressure. And yet, how tempting to a civilization that feeds on energy to build a captive star and feast forever on its power. Under powerful microscopes, scientists at the Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory have been assembling incredibly small, complex microstructures known as targets. They fill them with a gaseous mixture of tritium and deuterium, fuel for the thermonuclear reaction. Each target will be crushed in a devastating crossfire of high-power carbon dioxide lasers. Within the tiny volume of the target, the Los Alamos scientists will duplicate for a moment the terrible heat and pressure in the interior of the sun. Hydrogen nucleus will be slammed into hydrogen nucleus and fuse, releasing thermonuclear energy and ultimately usable electrical power. The sun is almost a perfect sphere. The forces which sustain its fusion burn are virtually constant. Yet sunspots suggest that the sun does not burn evenly. What then is the precision needed in a microscopic target to assure an efficient thermonuclear burn? How should this infinitesimal structure be fabricated, and of what materials? Scientists of the Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory's Laser Division have assembled a variety of targets for experimental use and have mounted them in various ways, on stalks, on thin triangular films, at the center of crosshairs. Target fabrication starts with a glass microballoon. It weighs less than 1/1,000,000th of a gram and has about the same diameter as the strand of human hair next to it on the right. In a pound of microballoons, about 10 billion of them, the scientists will find fewer than 1,000 that are the right size and have a suitably uniform wall thickness. First, they are separated by size in an inverted screen stack, which is immersed in ethanol and subjected to ultrasonic vibration. The microballoons, which contain air, rise through the ethanol and the successively finer screens. Only the finest microballoons reach the top. Broken pieces and balloons with perforations have no buoyancy and remain at the bottom. Next, the selected microballoons are made to float in an atmosphere of sulfur hexafluoride. The density of a microballoon is related to the thickness of its wall. Thinner-walled balloons rise in the heavy atmosphere. When they have collected at the top of the vessel, pressure is released. The microballoons drop into a collection cone. If the glass wall of a microballoon is not uniform in thickness, it will have one or more weak spots. The balloons are transferred to a chamber where they must withstand a high external pressure. Balloons with thin spots or defects shatter. Another pass through the ultrasonic sifter removes the fragments. Very few microballoons survive to this stage. Now each one will be examined individually. Transparent microballoons are inspected under an optical interferometer microscope. Symmetry and wall thickness are checked. Interference fringes must be circular and concentric with the balloon's outside surface. Balloons which exhibit non-circular fringes or fringes which are not concentric with the outside surface will be discarded. Opaque microballoons are examined by X-ray microradiography. Optical density information obtained in this way is then converted by an image analysis system for easier interpretation. This is a three-dimensional plot of the density information. The rim of the goblet-like structure is actually a plot of the microballoon wall thickness in 3 dimensions. It can be rotated for closer examination of any particular sector. If the balloon wall were perfectly uniform in thickness, the goblet rim would be smooth and horizontal. This is an electronically processed video image of a microballoon's wall thickness. Colors have been assigned to areas of equal density. As with the interferometer images, circular concentric color areas are desirable. This microballoon shows the desirable characteristics. It will move on in the process to become a laser fusion target. This one will be discarded. The selected microballoons must be filled with the deuterium-tritium gas, which will fuel the thermonuclear reaction. They are placed in a chamber where they are immersed in a high-temperature, high-pressure deuterium-tritium atmosphere. The fuel actually moves through the glass walls and fills the cavity. When sufficient gas has reached the interior of the balloon, outside pressure and temperature are allowed to drop rapidly. The deuterium-tritium fuel is left captive within the glass balloon. The fuel-filled balloon will now become the core of any one of several target types. In the 2-shell layered target, the fuel pellet will be encased within concentric shells of gold and plastic. These shells are made by coating copper microspheres. The gold coating can be applied by an electroplating process or by a technique known as electroless deposition. In the first case, copper microspheres are placed into a cylindrical reaction cavity which contains the plating solution. While the electroplating current is passed through the solution, fluid flow is periodically reversed. This and the presence of plastic spheres to create turbulence ensures even plating. In the case of electroless deposition, the copper spheres are pumped through an aqueous solution without electric current. The pumping action stirs the microspheres randomly, permitting them to acquire a uniform coating. The technique used to deposit the plastic coating is called glow-discharge polymerization. Once again, even deposition is of great importance. Electrodes mounted on electromagnetic vibrators keep the copper spheres in motion in an atmosphere of argon and paraxylene vapor. At 400 volts, the electrodes produce a glow discharge which activates the paraxylene and causes it to deposit evenly on the moving copper spheres. The gold and plastic coatings must be separated from their copper cores. Each sphere is rotated 360 degrees in the beam of a ruby laser, line focused to serve as a knife. Acid, allowed to seep through the incisions, dissolves the copper from within, leaving the coatings, now hemispherical shells. In some cases, an electron beam is used to deposit coatings on target components. The metal being deposited here is copper. Now, the exacting task of assembling the target takes place. It is done under a powerful microscope using tapered hairs for tools. First, the fine glass crosshairs are mounted on a target holder. Next, the deuterium-tritium-filled glass microballoon is glued in one quadrant, with its equator at the intersection of the crosshairs. One gold hemisphere is centered on the fuel pellet and attached to the hairs. Then the other half is attached. The plastic hemispheres are assembled in the same manner. Some targets, like the so-called ball and triangle, use a very fine mylar film instead of crosshairs to position the target elements. Special techniques have been developed to create and handle this film. Theory suggests that a more efficient thermonuclear burn can be obtained in a target which has been cooled to a very low temperature. Special apparatus has been designed to cool and position such cryogenic targets for the laser beams. The cooling chamber is hollow to accept the target and the stalk on which it is mounted. Liquid helium pumped into the chamber jacket drops the temperature to within a few degrees of absolute zero. The cooling chamber is slowly advanced over the target until the leading edge touches the micropositioner. Vacuum is introduced to make a positive seal. Helium gas is pumped into the cavity at low pressure to cool the target. As a result, the deuterium-tritium fuel gas becomes a liquid and then freezes at the bottom of the pellet. Through a sapphire window, a helium-neon laser fires on the target, vaporizing the fuel gas, which then refreezes at once as a uniform layer around the inside of the glass pellet. The helium gas is withdrawn from the cavity, leaving a vacuum to insulate the cold target from any outside contact. The vacuum seal is turned off, and the cooling chamber is retracted 1/100th of an inch. This is done slowly so as not to jar the target and its finely adjusted position. Once the seal is broken, retraction is rapid. The cooling chamber snaps back 1 3/4 inches in 3/1000ths of a second, and the powerful CO2 lasers fire. Here is the full sequence without interruption. The laser pulse instantly converts the low-density plastic shell to a hot, ionized gas called a plasma. The plasma expands rapidly outward, causing a recoil impulse to drive the gold shell inward. The dense gold shell implodes quickly and uniformly to compress the fuel core evenly on all sides. The fuel becomes super dense, 10,000 times the density of liquid, and the temperature soars to between 10 and 100 million degrees, hotter than the center of the sun. Thermonuclear fusion is achieved. Targets have been designed with more and different layers and of larger size. Laser fusion generating plants of the future will require high-yield pellets that contain more fuel. Circular banks of lasers will fire on pellets in sequence to generate power. A single such power plant is expected to produce enough electricity for a city of 1 million people in the future. For now, the job remains to fabricate and test targets. First in the 8-beam CO2 lasers while Antares takes shape, then in Antares itself, forerunner to the power plants of the future. In each of Antares' 6 modules, an initial pulse will be split into 12 parts and travel twice through the amplifier cavity. The 72 lasers, handled like 6 annular pulses, will have a combined intensity 10 times that of the 8-beam system. The laser crossfire at the heart of Antares will drive the temperature in the target up to the temperature that seethes in the heart of the red giant itself. At last, a tiny captive star to power the machines of man.